Hello, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. And so glad you're all here, as always. It's always a pleasure to be with you. It's always a pleasure to take a Sunday afternoon and do this early afternoon for me. For some people who join us, it's actually already Monday morning. So good morning to those of you who are already into Monday. For the rest of you, where it's still Sunday, happy Sunday. It's so good to be here with all of you. By all means, please type into the chat where you're from. I love to see that. It's all very helpful. There's Barbara from it's Barbro is in Sweden. Barbara is in Sandpoint, Idaho. Hi, Barbara. So good to see you. By the way, Barbara, I will be doing the retreat at the Krishnamurti Center again next year. They've already set that up with me, so that'd be very fun. Let's see if it's just that. And Akitos, hello from Athens, Greece. Marvelous. Miss B is from Llandudno. Llandudno. Do I say that correctly? Llandudno. Am I saying that correctly? Sarah's from France. Hi, Sarah. Medina from Seattle. Oh, somebody local like me. I am in Seattle right now. Barbara says, great, she'll be there. Well, welcome everyone to Satsang. This is really the thing I love to do most. Hello to Other Sun. This really is the thing that I love to do the most. I mean, I do a lot of courses and I do speaking and I do interviews and I do all sorts of things, but this is my absolute favorite thing, to just get in front of you all and interact and answer questions. It's just very, very, very gratifying. And I look forward to being able to do that live, which I'm diligently trying to pull together so that I can do some live satsangs, probably in New York and Seattle first, and then other places as well. So very glad to have you here. So good to be with you. By the way, I am doing a class this week for those of you that are interested, calling Letting Go of the Past. You Only Live Now. And if you're interested in that, you can go to gpwalsh.com/letgoyt, and it'll take you where you can find out about it. Let's see. Miss B says I said it right. I'm so glad. Barbara says hi from Sweden. Hi, Barbara. Sarah, hi everyone from Reykjavik, Iceland. Maluka, hi from Slovenia. What a kick. So remember, satsang is the opportunity to ask the deepest, most existential, most powerful questions that you can think of, the kind of questions that you've always wanted answers to, the kind of questions that lead to a deeper sense of freedom. Try to avoid the questions that are just feeding the mind more stuff for it to think about, and instead focus your attention more on how you feel about yourself, about how the world looks to you, about, those deep questions about what's the meaning here, especially in our modern world. our modern world is like really, really messed up. And I got a question that I wanted from email that I just decided I was going to take up here first. And it's a very powerful one. And it came on YouTube in response to one of the videos. I can't remember which video it was from. Somebody, Tabby 1975, said, if someone gets happiness by inflicting pain on others, is this a worthwhile pursuit for oneself's happiness? And she assumes not, or he assumes not, says, then how happiness can become the ultimate aim for everything we do. There is something beyond happiness. What is the human spirit made of? These are really, really very powerful questions. And the only way to answer those is to point out that there's there's when we're talking about spiritual happiness, we are not talking about merely pleasure. Pleasure can be a guide to it, but it isn't the whole picture. There's an emotional happiness, there's emotional pleasure that comes and goes, right? And everybody experiences it, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? I mean, if I get a surprise gift, I'm happy. If I kissed nicely, I get happy. Good things happen to me, I get happy. Bad things happen to me, I get unhappy. So that emotional happiness can't be the eternal, permanent happiness that we all seek. So it's not really just kind of seeking the up and down. And so, yes, somebody can take pleasure in causing other people pain. They can take pleasure in taking advantage of them. They can take pleasure in what they gain by fooling somebody or deceiving somebody. That's what they do on the news all day long. So there's that view, that happiness, the happiness that is simply a reaction to the environment, isn't really trustworthy. That is quite capable of being distorted and warped, and things that aren't kind or compassionate or even human can bring somebody pleasure. Now they call that happiness, but the happiness we're seeking, the deeper happiness, is the happiness that is beyond that. It is not something that goes up and down. And the word I tend to use instead, although I talk about happiness like that, is really contentment. It's a sense that no matter what's going on, everything is okay just the way it is. And that's a very important distinction to make. And it's what we're really seeking, because the world is seeking to create circumstances that it likes, that is people in there. The egoic mind is trying to create and maintain circumstances that it has deemed to be what it likes. And in a situation like that, the people who tend to do that, who are drawn to that, are the ones who are drawn to power and greed. They want to hold on to all this stuff because it's okay for them. That kind of happiness is very narrow, it's very petty, and it's self-destructive. Clearly, this constant pursuit of wealth is threatening the entire planet and everything on it. So, but a few people get very happy because they get to take over another country. We exploit the resources, and my stock prices go up. So I think this is the most wonderful thing in the world. It's a very narrow view. It's a view that is self-referencing. And so it is totally organic or egoic, not organic, egoic in nature, exactly the opposite of organic. And so there is pleasure in that. It's a distorted, warped pleasure. So where do we find happiness that doesn't come and go? That's the key. When I talk about happiness, that's really what I'm talking about. And maybe I should just always say, contentment in the future. There's only one place to find it, and that is to look in the one place that doesn't come and go. And that is our own sense of being, that sense of conscious existence, so that doesn't come and go. It watches everything else come and go. And that's, this isn't just a new theological idea I'm throwing out there. This is something you can verify through your own direct experience. There is something that notices everything that comes and goes. It notices, I am happy, I am sad. The happiness, the sadness, that emotional happiness and sadness does come and go. And if it comes and go, then that can't essentially be what I am. Because whatever I am is witnessing those feelings coming and going. So then the big question becomes, then is what I am subject to the ups and downs of what comes and goes? And if you look very closely, really look honestly and deeply, putting all the assumptions aside, you'll discover that it's not. That which is witnessing happiness come and go or pleasure come and go is itself beyond any that fluctuation of happiness. And that must be the source of lasting contentment. If it isn't, then lasting contentment does not exist. It only exists as a theory. And so that is what I would call something beyond happiness, if by happiness you mean simply the emotional ups and downs, an emotional feeling of, 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 of pleasure in a moment and then losing it. And then it's gone in the next, or a different, or the opposite feeling, a sadness or loss or grief. So that is a happiness that is beyond it. You can call it contentment, you can call it peace, you can call it stillness, you can call it just pure awareness. But that's the thing, that's the place where we have to seek everything. Because if we seek our happiness in that which comes and goes, our happiness is going to come and go. We will experience happiness as if it were fluctuating rather than a permanent state of contentment that's actually accessible to each and every one of us at all times. And then she makes another question, which seems to me to be, I think it's related, but it seems to be a different question. And that is, what is the human spirit made of? What is spirit made of? Well, my answer to that is spirit is not made of anything. That spirit is fundamental. That spirit is the actual substance of all things and not matter. That it's not divisible. You can't chop it into pieces and then put it back together. Indivisibility is something our minds cannot conceive, because our minds are reductionist and materialistic in nature, and everything is like, yeah, you break it down to its component parts until you get down to that final part in which that you cannot break apart. That indivisible wholeness, which transcends time and space, that to me is spirit. And we think of it as an individual spirit, but I don't. It's universal, infinite spirit that animates everything. And in fact, it's that universal spirit that's hearing my words right now. Spirit, consciousness, awareness, Buddha nature are all referring to exactly the same thing. So I hope that answers the question for you, Tabby 1975. I'll find the video that you originally asked that on and refer you to this satsang. I just thought it was really beautiful, and I wanted to answer that. Marv says hello from the Netherlands. Hello, Marv. Very good. Go back here. Puya says, dear GP, does physical illness affect spiritual awakening when there's constant pain in the body and there's no cure for it? How can a person get away from the pain to realize the truth? Well, it's a very important question. And I don't want to, I have to answer it in two ways, because I don't want to gloss over the significance of dealing with a chronic pain. There has been research done on chronic pain, and there's a Dr. John Sarno who wrote the book the mind-body connection. He was the guy who coined the phrase mind-body connection, as a matter of fact. He passed away recently, like 2 or 3 years ago. And anyway, in that book, he equates all chronic pain with emotional resistance, unhandled emotional material from the past, traumas and the like. And a very good friend of mine, and actually one of the students, you can look her up, Nicole Sachs, is one of his students, and she specializes in chronic pain through a process that she has. So I don't buy the idea that the pain is there's no cure for the pain. I'm not a doctor, so I can't say that with authority. Disclaimer, 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 right? Medicine disagrees with that, but there are literally tens of millions of people who suffer from chronic pain, and that it's almost an epidemic. And the real cause of it, that's been demonstrated over and over and over again, is it is simply emotional stuckness. It's unhandled, suppressed emotional material that we need to get in touch with. And the body is simply trying to bring your attention to it. So, but let's go deeper with that question. And that is, the physical conditions of your life have absolutely no effect whatsoever on your potential for spiritual awakening. Remember, your consciousness, you are conscious of this pain. Spiritual awakening is you begin to realize what that consciousness actually is, and that is who you are. And through the practice of allowing, the practice of meditation, the practice of learning how to drop your resistance to what's happening, the attention will be removed from that pain and focus more and more on that which is aware of it. Now, this is a very different way of approaching it. It takes some time, it takes some discipline, a little bit of coaching, but it can be done. And if you combine that with a process by which you can get in touch with the emotional disturbances that have created the chronic pain, you have both the inquiry and the yoga of inquiring and the yoga of allowing, and both of those are necessary. So the first thing I would say is, it's not true that there's no cure. There's no cure according to allopathic medicine. There are cures according to more spiritual and emotional approaches to it. They're just not mainstream. As I said, look, you can check out that book by John Sarno. You can also check out Nicole Sachs, Sachs, S-A-C-H-S. She's got videos about it on YouTube. She does, of course, she does private sessions. So I highly recommend her for that, for chronic. And I work on it too with inner reconciliation. That's what she specializes. She specializes on. So you don't have to get away from the pain to realize the truth. There are ways to move into that pain rather than resist it and fight it. And the more that resistance goes away, you will find that the pain itself is not nearly as, it does not create nearly the suffering as our resistance to it, and the idea that somehow it's blocking us from understanding who we really are. There is nothing that gets in the way of you discovering who you really are. That just can't be. If that was the case, well, I mean, we all be screwed, right? If something could actually get in the way of the awakening, then the awakening can be blocked. But you cannot block the truth. You cannot lose what you are and what you've always been. That cannot be lost. And that's why nothing can keep you from the realization of who you really are. Does that help, Puya? Moral Cyclists says hi from Holland. Soundscape Central, hey GP, how to deal with egoic, unconscious people that are really toxic, basically angry, shouty types of people that have to be around a lot. Well, first off is if you can get away from them, get away from them. There's no need for you to hang out with them. Let's say you can't, maybe they're your family, or it's a teacher you have at school, or it's people that you work with. In which case, then you focus your attention not on the toxicity of the person, but your own reaction to them. You don't suffer from somebody else's toxicity. You suffer from your resistance to life. And so if you're there's nothing you can do about it. They're toxic. You just stay there. You let it move through you. You don't let yourself become engaged with that story of toxicity and all the ideas that how that's affecting your life and making you unhappy. None of that is true. only your, if you believe that their toxicity will make you unhappy, you will be unhappy, not because of their toxicity, but because of your belief. And so, you know, I have my preferences. I prefer to be around, you know, quiet, well-behaved people, right? But I can't always, you know, sometimes you're with people that it's just not like that. And so, you know, I just rely on my own energy to respond in whatever way I can, and you know, and wait for the opportunity to open up so I don't have to be there anymore. And that's really the way to just take it. But first off, don't be judging others and their toxicity. Don't be taking it on yourself, and realize that nobody out there can determine the quality of your inner experience. Only you can do that. And if you project onto them some kind of power that they can make your life less than, then it will have that effect, but not because of them, only because of your belief. So simply let go. You can even let go of the idea that there are such a thing as toxic people, because that's simply another projection of your mind. People just are what they are. You know, sharks eat seals. You may not like it, but that's what they do. So if they're angry, shouty types, okay. What does that have to do with you? See, there's a resistance to being around them, and that's what's causing the suffering. You drop the resistance, you'll drop the suffering, and guess what? They'll stop being angry or shouty, or they'll disappear from your life. But right now, they're a very useful thing to be kind of hitting the button, you're pushing your button to remind you that uh, you are, your happiness, contentment, peace, abundance, prosperity are all independent of circumstances. And so these angry, shouty types, they happen to be your guru in this moment to remind you of who you actually are. See what happens with that, my friend. Anwankitos. From the recognition that we are Sat Chit Ananda comes the realization of what is really happiness. Yes, that's the Ananda that arises naturally out of the recognition of the Sat Chit. That is, being and consciousness are one. And from that, Ananda, bliss, peace, stillness arises. And that's genuine happiness. That's a happiness that is not a cheat. For those of you who don't know what Sat Chit Ananda is, Sat is a Sanskrit term that describes the nature of our being. It's a beautiful trinity. Sat meaning being, Chit meaning consciousness or awareness, and Ananda meaning bliss. Three aspects of the same thing. It is existence and self-aware existence, which means that the awareness and the existence are one. They're not two. There's not something that is aware of its existence. There isn't a being and then a knowing of a being. That the nature of being itself is the knowing of it. And that is bliss. That is eternal peace. That is eternal happiness. That is happiness that does not come and go. But that comes from the recognition of the oneness, that the actual nature of your being is conscious knowingness, not something that knows, but the knowing itself is being. Does that make sense? Is that clear to everybody? Because it's kind of like fundamental. Because even in non-dual teachings, you tell somebody that they are pure awareness. Our minds go, there's a me, and then there's pure awareness. I'm aware. So there's a me, and then there's this attribute of awareness. The reality is that awareness is your being. You are not a form that is aware. You are awareness, and it happens to be aware of forms, because forms emerge from awareness. Stephen says, hi, GP from Perth. Oh, wow, from Perth in Australia. Washington? Perth, Washington? No, Perth, Australia. And Bogdan Allen says, spirit is like an order? I'm not sure what you mean by that question. Bogdan, or yeah, Bogdan, if you want to ask that again. Anyway, is everybody clear about the Sat Chit Ananda thing? Three aspects of one thing that can't actually be perceived or conceived of because it's one. Right? If it's one, there's nothing to conceive of it in terms of, right? It's all there is. And it's empty. It has no attributes. It has no characteristics except self-aware beingness. So I really want that. That is such a deep thing to ponder. And again, don't take in what I say intellectually and go, oh, that's a great idea. And then, go off somewhere. But take it in and go, okay, wait a minute. What he's saying is that I am not a form. I'm not a thought. I'm not a feeling. I'm not a sensation. I'm not a form at all. So the actual substance of my being is the knowing of my being, that knowing and existing are one and the same. And he's also saying that the recognition of that is eternal bliss. Now, that to me sounds like something that is something that should grab our attention and our curiosity. So I hope you will take that up. Let's see, Maja Maya. Hi from Croatia. Been away the last few Sundays. Nice to be back. Hello, Masha. So good to have you back. LW retracted a message. Ivan says, hello from Bulgaria. In the past, it's past 11 p.m. and I was going to bed, but then I saw you are live and can't miss it. Oh, that's great. Thank you for a very clear and simple yet deep satsang. You're so welcome, Ivan, and hope I don't keep you up too late. Haron, hello, Haron. Hi, GP, just reporting. I feel I've made great progress lately. I have a sense that the person is done. Yay. I still experience the emotions from the person, but they don't bother me as much anymore. Yes. What you find is that the person is imaginary, but there are thoughts, there are sensations, there are emotions. I mean, that's undeniable, right? That's self-evident. The non-dual inquiry says is those thoughts coming and going are those essentially what I am? So when I say I am unhappy, I mean, it's kind of like this statement, right? Almost as if it was a permanent fact, a fixed fact, right? And in fact, it's not, because sometimes I'm happy, I'm miserable, I'm tired, I'm energetic, right? So no condition is essentially what you are. But believing that some condition is what you are is what gives rise to the feeling of being a limited, finite, separate person. When in fact, just look for yourself at the consciousness that is aware of everything coming and going. Does it come and go? And if not, then what is that made of? Is that happy and sad, or is it inherently simply still, quiet presence? This is what needs to be pondered, and you will experience it as an increasing absence of the reactiveness to the environment, to the emotions. They come and go. Oh, okay, I see. They're coming and going. Of course they're coming and going. That's what they do. But they no longer affect me. Now go even further and ask, okay, who is this me that isn't reacting? Who's this me that I am referring to? And don't stop until you realize that it's over. There's nothing left of that person. They're gone. And you were never that. So don't stop yet. Keep going. I'll keep you going. That's part of my job. LW, I'm only able to attend your amazing satsang for a moment, but I was glad to do so. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste. Genji. Genji G? Jenny G. You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome, LW or Jenny G. You can certainly listen to the replays. I'll tell you, it's tough finding a time that works for everybody in the world. There is no time that works for everyone in the world. Kamran says hi from Manchester. Hi, good to have you. Ivan, sometimes I deeply feel that nothing material can bring me what I really need and want. But instead of liberating me, I feel that it should. This thought makes me lose ground and it makes me sad. The reason it makes you feels like it lose ground and makes you sad is that the mind then interprets that nothing material is going to bring me what I really want. Um, that therefore nothing's going to have meaning. It's all useless. It's all pointless, which is the nihilism that Buddha was accused of all the time. Um, all it means is that the material object doesn't possess the qualities that are really in us. We begin to realize that the objects that we call material, and not even material, they're objects of consciousness, are a reflection of consciousness. They're a reflection of you. So it doesn't mean going without. What it means is that you find it first within, and then it manifests itself without. It expresses itself in your life. The life never becomes, empty and drab and void. This isn't nihilism. This is not the end of meaning. It just means that the meaning is coming from you. It's not coming from some kind of an object. And yes, no object can deliver to you what it does not possess. The moon can't illuminate you. The moon doesn't have any light. The moon is reflecting light. It has none of its own. So the material object that we're pursuing has no characteristics of its own. It reflects whatever it is that we project on it. When we bring that projection back home, back into ourselves, we don't lose the object. We don't lose that at all. We simply see it differently. We certainly lose our attachment to it. We lose the idea that having it or not having it is going to make me happy or miserable, is going to make me safe or in danger. You do lose that. But the object itself, even the what we call the material world, gets liberated when you realize that you aren't dependent upon it. So the let the objects not be something that they're a problem you have to get rid of. We simply need to see everything as it actually is. We need to see things through the eyes of awareness, or you could say through the eyes of love, and recognize that nothing in our experience has intrinsic meaning. The meaning is everything that you give it. So that means everything in your life is shining by a reflected light, and that light is your consciousness. So you never lose anything in this except the sense of separation. That it isn't a material object at all. It is an inherent attribute of consciousness. It appears in and is made of consciousness, but consciousness is way, way more than any object. Obviously, any object can appear in consciousness. So consciousness is completely and totally open, spacious, empty of anything other than its own infinite being. And that infinite being manifests itself as infinite objects. To study the Tao is to study one's self, or to study Zen is to study oneself. To study oneself is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 things of the world. That's the way Doug Zen put it. To be enlightened by the 10,000 things. To be enlightened by the objects of the world. Once you know who you are, you see everything as it is. And so nothing is lost in this. Nothing is lost. You find everything that you've been seeking in the object is already within you. That brings about a certain relief and liberation and freedom and happiness. And then that manifests itself as the very objects in your life. That's the real nature of manifestation. Does that help, Ivan? Mitch or Mich Lighthouse, hi from Sydney, Australia. Hello, good to see you. Eli Jen says, my mind cannot comprehend that Satchitananda. I had a realization like that, but I thought about it and my mind blew up. Like literally, I was racing and shit. And now I am my only problem lately. I feel this sense of no purpose at all. I don't want to do anything, but when I sit, it's very, very uncomfortable. Well, yeah, that sense of not wanting to do anything that's what happens. Our lives are defined, energy, motivation, everything about attempting to gain freedom and safety, and basically happiness. When we believe it's outside of ourselves, our entire lives revolve around that. Our sense of identity has evolved around that. And so your whole purpose is to go after these things, because that means going after happiness. But when you realize that the happiness isn't in those things, there's a what's the word? A disorientation that takes place inside of us. What I encourage people to do is to simply just start re-exploring what it is you actually like, what it is you actually like to do, freed from the burden of having to get happiness, and instead just kind of meditating on the innate happiness opens up the door for a rediscovery of life as it was meant to be, not pursuing something outside of ourselves, but expressing something that is very alive within ourselves. And yes, it is going to feel uncomfortable, because the entire momentum of your nervous system has been the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit which, once you realize it's futile, because it's not in any of the things that you are pursuing, is to wake up to who you really are, but also the 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 disorientation that's going to precipitate within the nervous system. You stay with it, you be with it, you recognize it for what it is. It is inevitable. When when you when you're changing directions, I mean, the human life is a big boat. You turn that wheel, it doesn't, it just doesn't turn on a dime. It goes very, very slowly. And there's a certain amount of resistance to it, because it's it's been operating under this regime for decades. And all of a sudden now it's got to find a new way of being. This is very, very powerful. And this is where I refer to the yoga of allowing, or the tantric path, the path of letting our vision sink into the whole nervous system, get down into the cells and rewire the whole system. This does not happen like that. But once you've seen this, you can begin to persist. You can begin to patiently uh, wait. You can patiently be present with yourself and with others as this transformation begins to take place within us. But it requires that, because it's going to be uncomfortable. I guarantee it. You've destabilized the nervous system, which was headed in a certain direction. You've destabilized that. So it's feeling very uncomfortable, very nervous. What in the world do I do? It wants to return back to the old model. But if your vision is deep enough, it can't, right? And so now your job is to just simply be really present and aware and clear on your vision. And eventually the nervous system will reorganize itself around your vision. The process of reorganization is a process of destabilization and discomfort. there's no there's no way around it. So don't worry about it. Just continue to sit with it, um, and allow it to be there. But simultaneously begin to explore new interests, new motivations, new things arising. You're not going to be, it's not nihilism. You're not going to be left flat where there's nothing there, right? What will replace it is something that feels more authentic, more like you. It'll have less pressure on it. It'll have less of a feeling of urgency, less of a feeling of fear, And you'll just really begin to settle into, boy, this is what I really love to do. Does that help? Does that help, Eli? Anthony Fontano says, I keep forgetting to feel good. How do I stop forgetting so I consistently feel good throughout the day? It's not, Anthony, it's not really that you're forgetting to do it. It's just the habit. I talk a lot about this, the habit energy of the human system, which so did Buddha, actually, at least in the Lankavatara, which is one of my favorite sutras. It's there's this habit, there's momentum that goes on. And the momentum for most of us is not feeling good. It's reactive, it's resistant, it's seeking and grabbing. I mean, it's desire and fear, right? The classic dynamic duo. And when it begins to dawn on us who we really are, and that what's coming and going isn't who we are, it begins to bring about a shift within the entire energy system, because it's being led by consciousness, as it always is. And so, but that habit of attention going back to its reactive patterns to what's happening is still there, and it's strong, and that's all it is. Situation happens in the environment. The system has been programmed to react with unhappiness, or with happiness, but with feeling bad or feeling good. You're retraining the system so that it doesn't automatically respond to a circumstance with feeling bad. So it's not that you're actually forgetting it. You keep running into layers of habitual patterns. And these habitual patterns are thoughts, emotions, and sensations. So if something happens in the environment, the reaction is not feeling good or distracted from it. Remember, that was the default for so long. Your nervous system is going to want to return to it. So you could do anything you want. You could put stickers on the mirror, anything to remind you, oh yeah, that's right. I actually have the option of feeling good in this moment. And then you can actually even appreciate it when you don't. Because when you recognize, oh, I'm actually completely letting myself go along with these unhappy, disconnected feelings. The moment you've seen it, right, notice that you are looking at it from a different point of view. Now, this point of view is the real you. It's the witnessing consciousness. What happens is, of course, is that consciousness has been identified with the nervous system, with the really the mindless programmed responses of the nervous system. Those happen to go, oh, I'm this, I'm sad, I'm not feeling good, right? And you begin to realize, wait a minute, I'm more than that. I actually have choice here. I can actually do something about this when I'm conscious of it. But then we fall into the unconscious. That's okay. If you beat yourself up for that, what can you do? You're unconscious, right? It's like you're asleep. But the thing is the more you recognize it, the more time you spend with the awake part, with the and the awake, the more aware you are of it, the more you recognize when suddenly you go, oh wow, I was going along with that again. I forgot. The moment you realize that, reinforce that, I'm remembering. Because the remembering, my friend, is not an act of will. And that's where we get confused. We think, I'm remembering. No, you're not. You were forgotten. Something else is tapping you on the shoulder. That something else is the real you. That's the real consciousness. So it's not that you're forgetting, right? You are simply kind of lost, mesmerized by the old habits and patterns. And the awakened you is tapping you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's not real. Remember me? And you go, right. So don't be the least bit concerned. The only important thing is that when you wake up to it and you go, oh, and you remember, notice that you remembered. And the more energy you give that, the more gratitude you have for that, the more enthusiasm you have about that, the more often it's going to happen, until you don't fall into it very much at all. and eventually never. Does that answer it for you, Anthony? The gang says, hello, GP from California. Hello, hello, Dagang. So good to see you. Anikitos, my resident Greek. Did we choose to be born or some other force make us do it? What do you think, GP? What we call, I'm going to go very, very non-dual and existential on this, right? There's many people who say, yes, you choose this life and you choose that life. I don't remember any of that. I have no evidence of that. I have no idea. What happens in between lives, I have a sense of it. Nothing I say can I prove. I do know that I don't end. I know that. I know it intuitively. I know it instinctively. Again, I can't prove it. I can't prove it empirically. I can't prove that I existed before I was born, and I can't prove that I'm going to exist after I die. I know for a fact that whatever it is that was here before I was born, and whatever it is that here's after I die, whatever that I is, it is not this body. The only way that can be possible is that I'm not the body. If I am the body, death is it. It's over. So you didn't choose to be born. It's, the random thing, sperm meeting egg, right? That's the materialistic view. Well, I don't take that view, but I also don't. I don't see the world as this constant that we get born into and out of. I see us, consciousness, you, as the constant, and worlds appear and disappear to you, like Brahman on the lotus. He would blink and a universe would appear, and he'd blink again and that one would disappear and a new one would appear. The world appears to consciousness, not the other way around. So nothing forces us to be born into a body, because you're not born into a body. Bodies appear and disappear. Once they appear, there's a sense of identification with the body that makes us think, I'm in this body, or I am this body. Well, you're not in the body. Consciousness cannot be contained. It's infinite. It's way beyond the perimeter of this body, which is this particular shape, this particular form. This is also just an image in mind. This is consciousness, nothing more. Nothing more. I mean, it's everything, right? It is consciousness. So when nothing is forcing this to happen. It is the nature of consciousness itself to condense into form. Form and consciousness are not separate. Being and Sat and Chit are not separate. There's an emptiness to the form, and emptiness is form, form is emptiness. That's right from the Heart Sutra. This is a tough one for people to get, because we want to think of space, it's empty, there's nothing there. So we think of the emptiness and there's nothing there. But the emptiness is not nothingness. That was the nihilism that Buddha and others were accused of. Buddhists have been accused of for a long time. It is not nothing. It is the infinite potential for everything. So it's not a substance like we would call energy or matter. It is simply pure potential, but it is self-aware potential. And so that potential takes form, condenses right out of the very substance of it. The substance of everything is the same. It is consciousness. Consciousness takes form constantly. This constant motion of impermanence, this constant river of events, is not something that was started or caused or forced or anything. It is the natural result of being itself. This is the thing about it. Beingness is permanent, it's eternal, it's changeless. And yet it manifests in forms that are nothing but impermanent and constantly changeful. And again, I use the example of music. You cannot say what music is. You can't detect it. You can't, nothing. You can't anything about it. It's completely empty and silent. And yet it gives rise to every single piece of music there is. Every single piece of music you say, that's music. So music is like this infinite substance of potential for all songs, and they all emerge within it. Well, consciousness is the infinite substance of the potential for everything, including music and form and people and life and planets and universes upon universes upon universes. It is the ultimate substance, the ultimate potential of everything. And why does one thing manifest in something else? There's the only thing when people ask me a question like that, what they're really saying is, I really don't like what's happening in my life and I want something else to be made manifest. The thing that makes one thing happen over another is simply the eyes through which it's being seen. The eyes that see are determining what they see. The mind that is perceiving is creating that which it is perceiving. And it's simply the nature of the lens through which you see things. So I emphasize all the time, seeing things the way they actually are. Here's a little bit of a follow-up here. Is when I see where I am, oh boy, if I kick my ass, if I was the one with that brilliant idea. Hold on a second. Did I get that right? Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it. Okay. So he continued, constantly feeling, no, that was choose to be one thing, or nothing forces us, because when I see where I am, oh boy, I'll kick my ass if I was the one with that brilliant idea. I'd kick my ass if I was the one with it. I'm not sure exactly what that last part means there, Anikitos. But everything, everything grows out of your own nature. It's really that simple. We choose this or that, not because it's like, you don't choose something that isn't natural to you. We don't eat wood. Humans don't eat wood. Why? Well, it's not natural. We can't process it. It has nothing to do with us. If you're a beaver, termite, totally good. So what happens, the things that come up, the events in their life, they're all a product of our nature and our conditioning. Exploring the nature of our conditioning. I mean, if I could say what spiritual liberation is, it is the liberation from conditioning. It is the liberation from identification with what in fact is nothing more than the adaptive nature of the nervous system. Nervous system adapts very quickly to an environment. If you believe that you are that adaptation, then you are stuck in your conditioning, and that's who you think you are. That isn't who you are. The conditioning you're experiencing is the nervous system, which is simply adapted to the environment. So you're not that. You're the consciousness that is aware of that. And all problems, all limits, all feelings of being stuck, all things like, is my destiny? Why is this still happening? All come because you've identified with the conditioning. When you don't identify with the conditioning anymore, the conditioning actually begins to yield, because it has to have your attention and belief in it to be sustained. Without it, it doesn't have any energy of its own. And therein lies the whole crux of this thing. You are way, way more than you think you are. You are not your conditioning. You are not this body. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are not the sensations. You are not your perceptions. You are not your mind. You are beyond all of those, yet you believe that you are. You believe that you are contained by those. It is your belief that is producing the experience and not the actual circumstances itself. It's not even a problem of the conditioning. It's the sense of I identified with the conditioning, and that at that identification, you get the person. The sense of being, I'm this form, these are my circumstances, things are really tough for me. All the beliefs just layer on top of that. You can wipe the whole thing out in one fell swoop. You are not your conditioning. You are not a mere adaptation to the environment. You are not the robot. Ivan says, oh, really helpful. All you said, I knew it intellectually, but hearing it now made me cry and smile simultaneously. Very good. I really felt it. All as a reflection of me. So beautiful. Thank you. Oh, wow. That's great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, 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 yes. And then he says, oh my God, I just realized nothing is against me. All is me. All is God. Yes, nothing is against you unless you believe it. I mean, it's, I mean, it's a mind blower. There's nothing is against you. We perceive things against us, not realizing that the belief of being separate gives rise to the sense that there's something working against us, and it's nothing but a false belief. It's not true. And I can tell by your language, you're actually realizing it and not just, yes, it getting it intellectually is okay. We just have to keep going. When we say intellectual, what it really means is it's like the thoughts have begun to clear, and there's a clarity that's arisen at the level of thought, but it still needs to get into the level of feeling and the level of living. And that's the only problem. Most people say, well, I get it intellectually, and it's kind of a derogatory statement. It's not. It's just the first step. That's all. You understand, you glimpse it. And there's a feeling about that too. It hasn't been worked at intellectually. It means you're seeing it from your visionary mind. It just has not sunk in to the whole energy system yet. That's it. That's all you have to worry about then, is going, that is true. I'm not going to dismiss it simply because it's mostly in my mind at this point. I'm just going to start living it. I'm just going to start embodying it. I'm going to start seeing that truth can unseat all of the falsities and errors and stuff that I've been believing. Because once something is seen as true, you can't mistake it for false anymore. And once something is seen as false, you can't mistake it for true anymore. So thank you, Ivan. That's really, really, really beautiful. Stephen Farrington says, appearance in self. Stephen, give me a little bit more info. It had something to do with what I said earlier, but don't ask me to repeat what I said earlier. BE, can you explain the nervous system? Yeah, I can. And then Tom says, greetings from Poland. It's good to hear you. Hi to Poland. Wonderful. When I'm talking about the nervous system, when I'm talking about the human nervous system, is a sophisticated organic machine that is designed to adapt to its environment extremely quickly. It's probably the phenomena of the human nervous system, is that it is so much more adaptable to the environment than than almost every other creature. We can adapt very quickly to environments. I mean, so do some other critters like the cockroach and the like. But they don't have, cockroaches don't write poetry. So we have a lot more that is adapting. That adaptive quality, right? I mean, I use the example of water being poured in a container. You are born into an environment. Your nervous system is the capacity of the body for survival. And its power of survival is it can map the environment in which it lives. It can determine what's safe and what's dangerous. It can avoid the dangerous. It can move towards the safe. When you're very, very young, there's not a sense of self developed. That creates a conditioning which we later then identify with. So the nervous system is simply the capacity of the body to survive in pretty much any environment. It's a very extreme environment to really end somebody's life. Very extreme. Most of the time, be it a really good environment or really bad environment, the system will adapt to it. People adapt to prison, they adapt to solitary confinement, they also adapt to living wealthy. And they adapt, they become that environment, the same thoughts and feelings and expectations and the like. What's different about spiritual awakening is that we recognize the nervous system for what it is, its adaptive capacity, but we're no longer identified. We no longer see it as this is myself. Right? So you're, so at that point, an amazing thing takes place. You become aware of the reactive patterns, but you don't feel that personal sense of constraint anymore. You recognize that it's just a habit in the nervous system. The moment you recognize that it's just that's what it is, you begin to separate from it, and it begins to dissolve because it doesn't have the same amount of energy. So think of the nervous system as just the, the body's natural capacity to survive, and it's and the incredibly sophisticated way in which it does it. It's simply an adaptation, just like the water. You pour water into anything, it takes the shape of what it is. That's what the nervous system is designed to do. And as the sense of self and intelligence develops, that's where the sense of the egoic mind comes from. It's simply the sense of self that is identified not with the consciousness, which is what you actually are, but is identified with the conditioning, which is what you're not. But that conditioning is the natural part of life. So the only problem, conditioning is not a problem, because without it, all of us be dead. Not to mention all the things that we can do with it, like talk, right? That's a matter of conditioning. I don't have to think about every word. That's the good side of conditioning. The only thing we have to concern ourselves with is identifying with that conditioning as if it was ourselves. And it's not. It's a limitation on the self. Does that help you, BE? Is that explaining enough for you? I'm not really a neuroscience. I know a bunch of stuff about it, but I'm not really a neuroscientist. I can't go into all the details of it. They analyze it every which way since Sunday. I look at it purely from a purely functional, therapeutic, and existential nature. Because of my the experience with it is what I'm concerned with, and the sense of identification being separate from it. It says, is the nervous system the ego? Consciousness identified with the nervous system creates the ego. That's a sense of I am the body. Now, it's not true. It's a belief. And that's why it becomes the ego. That becomes the person. I'm identified with that sense of identification, which is narrow because it's only the conditioning. And then it sets up really a hostile relationship with the environment, or I've got to get what I need from the environment. That's it. That is the ego. Take away the identification, you take away the ego. And that's all there is. That's all there is to it. If you believe yourself to be the conditioned responses of the system, that I is the ego, and it's just a thought. That's all it is just the thought. The ego is not a thing. It is simply the thought I, identified with the body, the nervous system, the energy system. Take away that identification, you take away the ego. It's not a thing. It is simply a thought. Ivan says, for the first time, I'm not afraid. It can go away. It has nowhere to go. Such a relief. Afraid it can go away. It has nothing to go. Thank you so much. You're so welcome, Ivan. Yeah. Where is it going to go? Yeah, that's beautiful. Juan says, hi from Dominican. Let's see. Tom, is the feeling I am present even in deep sleep when there's no experience of the world? Yes, it is. We don't think it is because we think there's I, have a feeling of I am. What is there in deep sleep is just the I am, no sense of being I am anything in particular, not a sense of I am, the pure I am. The absolute is always present. It's never gone. It can't be. Something would have to notice it coming and going. So it's just always there. Take away all content including the thought I am, including the sense I am, which can only arise when the I am is there. And now you have the pure, undifferentiated, absolute awareness, which is the essence of what you are. The I am arises on that. That's the firstborn of creation. When that I am is awakened, it does not identify with everything that comes with the I am, because the sense I am gives rise not just to a person, but the entire universe. That I am identified with a form becomes the person. So take away all the content, and you are still there. Aware that there's no content, but that means no thought, no experience, nothing, which means no time, no change, nothing, nothing other than you. And in those moments of deep sleep, that's exactly what is happening. You are you, not having any experience. But we are so identified with our experience, we think, well, I'm not there. Wrong. You're there. You're just having no experience. You are just being. Ramana Maharshi would even say that when you're in deep sleep, the world doesn't exist. Ponder that. BE says, okay, I think I get it. Thank you. Oh, good. More questions about it, please. Tell me. RHGH 15. Hi, GP. Ray from the UK. Isn't enlightenment sort of brain-mind functionality in which noting more than usual than the particular knowledge to change the condition or state of thought or mind? That's not enlightenment. It certainly is a great experience, and it's a lot of experience people have in meditation and the like. But the enlightenment is a much deeper probing into the nature of experience itself. The materialistic reductionist view has consciousness as a product of the brain. That's a nihilistic by nature, because if it's nothing but a product of the brain, then you aren't anything. There's nothing that has inherent existence. It's a momentary phenomena, and even the sense of I becomes questionable, and many do in that camp actually do. There is no person. There is nobody there. It's a very complex. It's like artificial intelligence. Very, very complex response mechanism. And the nervous system is that for sure. So the question is, does consciousness result from the brain? Or is the brain simply an image in consciousness, which means all the brain is the thought? I have come down on the side of the consciousness only model, that it's consciousness that, I mean, the idea of a brain was produced by consciousness. The idea of neurology, functioning of the brain, consciousness arising from the brain, all appears in consciousness. Consciousness, I have infinite evidence of. Brain, matter, all these structures, I have no evidence for, because I can't experience anything outside of consciousness. So the question of what is I'm experiencing, I can't assume that it's something out there made of matter that I'm perceiving, because I have no capacity. Nobody has the capacity to do that. So that is an unprovable assumption, which is why Dalai Lama called it a metaphysical assumption and not a scientific fact. So, yes, awareness of the conditioned patterns, which are there, right? And awareness that they are conditioned patterns allows you to change the conditioning, the state of thought, the state of mind. But it doesn't answer the deeper question, who are you? Who is the one that is aware of the brain? Who is aware of mind? Right? I mean, I think looking for consciousness in the body is like looking for the singer in the radio. It's not there. Consciousness is something that is qualitatively different. And if you look really close, I'm not a scientist say that. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, the material model, it's got to be that because they believe in that so much. So consciousness, it's got to be something like that. But it's like total, it's this total enigma, because the nature of consciousness is like nothing else, because there's nothing else in the universe that exudes consciousness like that. There's no structure, there's no consciousness molecule. And so it's this complex relationship and the like, or it exists independently of it. And many, many, many more are coming to that conclusion. And that's the position that I take. So enlightenment is the recognition that consciousness exists independent. It is substance in and of itself. It is not the result of some process. It's foundational. It is fundamental. It is essential. Consciousness is the primary element. Consciousness is the God particle, if you will, and not some material structure. They're completely different points of view. And I just invite everybody to explore it for yourself. Because I think when you do, you'll come to the same conclusion that no, it can't be. It just can't. It just doesn't make any sense. Stephen Farrington, if I am consciousness, then the world and the ego is appearance in self equals consciousness appearing in itself. Not well said, sorry. Then the world and the ego is appearance in self. Yes. What we call the ego is simply a thought about the conditioning. The conditioning and that thought are both appearing in front of consciousness, which is what you are. So it's okay that conditioning appears. It's okay that a sense of I appears and we recognize it as the ego, as long as you recognize that it's just a thought. I am unhappy is just a thought. I'm in trouble is just a thought. That's all it is. There's no truth to it. It's just a thought. If it's just a thought, then you can just kind of withdraw from it. So even that thought is of I am unhappy is part of the conditioning. And the one who is aware of the thought and the conditioning is completely free of it. So the ego is simply a word for yet another function of the conditioned pattern, which is simply the thought of I. Does that make it more clear, Stephen? Shanti says, morning, GP. Thanks for showing up again. Some days I just wake up and find there's no need to search, as everything is just as it is, and life feels light and easy, and I just get on with life. Wow. Yes. However, it still feels like me noticing this, though, and is generally followed by a day that is particularly challenging, and I am back to desperately seeking again, right? You're seeking because you think somehow some days you wake up and you find that that feeling of searching isn't there. And another day you wake up and you find this feeling of searching is there. So you just notice that you are not either of those. You are neither seeking nor not seeking. This is not about, I'm going to end seeking now and feel this way all the time. It's about noticing that what comes and goes, and then noticing what doesn't come and go. That's it. So when you no longer are concerned about whether there's a sense of seeking there or a sense of not seeking, you're free of it. This isn't to get to the point where we're not seeking. The seeking thought may arise, right? What you're looking for is the seeker. Who is the seeker? The seeker doesn't exist. The seeker doesn't exist, and there's no seeking, there's no not seeking. You go beyond the entire thing. So we're not trying to establish some emotional state. Enlightenment is not the establishment of some state of perpetual bliss. It is a complete and total liberation from dependence on any circumstance. And that very separation actually changes the complexion of circumstances, but not because you need them to. You don't really care. You are free. It's not you don't care, it's you don't mind. Wherever you are is okay, because there's nothing in you to react to that to create suffering. So everything just is as it is. Or as they say in Buddhism, suchness is just that. And no reaction, no suffering, no nothing. You just experience that moment as it is. Experience happiness and you watch happiness go. You experience sadness and you watch sadness go. You see they're just experiences coming and going on this screen, this field of awareness. But the awareness itself remains changeless, still, peaceful, content. We get lost in spirituality when we think that spirituality, awakening, enlightenment is a particular human state. It's not. It is a freedom from all human states. They can be whatever they need. As Nisargadatta said after his enlightenment, I allowed my human life to fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. Follow that? She said, maybe you addressed my answer earlier. I was still asleep. Well, I'm glad you're awake now. And we answered it anyway. Kay Lee says, Greece is watching from here as well. Nice to be with you, be here with you all again. Oh, wonderful. Another one from Greece. Benoit says, hi, G. Even when we realize the self-consciousness is foundational, we still have no clue about why the world is so perfect, how it came to be. All these questions remain unanswered, right? Yes and no. They remain unanswered from the point of view of trying to see it in terms of cause and effect and why it happened. It remains quite answered when you realize that it is simply the spontaneous manifestation of that which is. Why does something manifest like that? I don't know. Nobody knows. It is simply the way it is. Why did Picasso paint what he did? Who knows? When you look at, why does you listen to a good jazz player improvising? Why are they playing like that? Who knows? It spontaneously arises. It's this incredibly beautiful, spontaneous appearance, but its appearing is recognized as orderly, as form, as beauty, and you just simply go, wow. I mean, the best answer to the question is God's simply loving his own being, her own being. That would be the answer. The mind wants to see, well, this caused that, this caused that. And the mind is looking for a chain of causation. There is no chain of causation anymore. The only cause for a reflection appearing in the mirror is that you're standing in front of it. The universe is the reflection of the true self. Because the true self is, everything else is. Because you are, everything else is. And that's the only cause and effect relationship there is. The original and the reflection of it. So realizing that this consciousness is the self, we begin to identify with that of which everything else is a reflection. And that really becomes, oh, it's all my reflection. Everything I'm experiencing is myself. It is the reflection of me. So it is me. I look in the mirror and go, yeah, that's me. Now you're looking in the mirror of infinite intelligence and you're seeing yourself. Does that help, Benoit? Tom, how to anchor in the pure sense of being? My attention is often going away from simply being to the world. Patience. Two things. One is noticing when your attention is going away, something notices it going away. When it comes back, something notices it coming back. That is where you anchor it. Right? Attention is seen, isn't it? So your attention and it moving here and there is something else that is being seen. So you don't have to anchor attention in pure awareness. You don't have to do it. You have to recognize that you are the pure awareness that is seeing the attention. Now it doesn't matter what happens to the attention. It comes and goes, fine. You are always who you are. That, of course, will settle in so that you are aware of the attention coming and going, and yet there's still this sense of presence that is always there. And then attention becomes much more disciplined. I mean, there are some traditions that focus attention with mantras and things like that, and that all really that helps, improves concentration and the like. But it's not the answer to the existential question. Attention is simply uh, an aspect of being. You could even call it the creative power of being. Wherever attention goes, it gets amplified. But it can go anywhere, right? and and the fact that anything can appear in attention and all of it can be received by awareness means you're the awareness. You're even more subtle than the attention. So you don't have to worry about the attention going away. Notice that behind that, there's some kind of fear that, oh, it's going away, therefore I'm not anchored in being. You are being, right? You can't help but be anchored in being. That's where you are. That's where we go. Not worried about where the attention is going, but recognizing that it is always me that is aware of everything. And that never comes and goes, ever. So don't worry about the attention coming and going. The fact that you notice it coming and going, go, oh, who's noticed the attention has just left? Oh, I did. Who am I? Keep going back to there. Let's see. Stephen says, thanks. Yes, I guess I got the answer right for him last time. Patang says, there are no questions anymore and no answers either. It's all clear. Reality changes according to the way it does. Awareness never changes. Yes. Yes. I just let that marinate and sink in deeper. There's no questions then. And no answers because you don't need any. You know? You are the answer. You're the only answer there's ever been. Thanks for sharing that, Patang. Benoit, I feel like the only realization you can have is that you are not your ego thoughts. You are consciousness. But the mystery of existence remains. Can we become conscious of why there is something? Well, if there was a cause to the something, then yes, you could become aware of why. But when there isn't a cause, there's no why. That which is has no origin, so it doesn't have a why does it exist. It just does. And that's unfathomable to the mind, which has to find a cause for everything. I feel like the only realization you can have is that you are not your ego thoughts. No, you go beyond that. Knowing that you're not the ego thoughts turns your attention back to say, well, something is witnessing the ego and thoughts. Something is seeing the ego and the thoughts, watching all the thoughts come and go, including the thought of I and identification. All of that is being seen by something. What is that? That's the I am. And so what we're after is the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. That's the Buddha. That's the truth of your being. That is the ultimate realization of who you are. Not just that you're not your ego and your thoughts. That's the start. That turns the attention towards the deeper question. Well, okay, if I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my sensations, I'm not feelings, I'm not perceptions, I'm not my memories, I'm not my associations, what am I? What is it that's actually beholding all of that? And then you go beyond even the words we have, pure awareness, consciousness, Buddha nature, to your direct experience of it, discovering the mystery that is you. That's the only way to probe the mystery, is to recognize that you are the mystery. Who am I? Can you not know yourself? Of course you can. Know yourself not as an object, not as something out there, not as a form, not as a person. You can only know yourself directly as you are, from the inside out, from a distance of zero. Knowing yourself and experiencing your own being. And they turn out to be one and the same. But it is this huge mystery that just lights us up. I mean, it's a total mystery. It's always going to be a mystery. And here it is. I sit and talk about it all the time. But that's the beauty of it. Love is a mystery, but do you not want to fall in love? I mean, music is a mystery. Art is a mystery. It's all mysterious, and yet it's unbelievably beautiful and fulfilling and satisfying and everything else. Can we become conscious as to why there is something? No. You become conscious of being that something. And then there are no whys. I am the why. I just am. You just are. And the universe just is. And the universe is incredibly spectacular. Contemporary classical guitar by Laird Mins. Hi, Laird. I love you, Mr. Walsh. New to you. You are genuine. Good job. I can feel your authenticity. Thank you. You're most welcome. Contemporary classic guitar by Laird Mins. Get a little plug in for you. Laird, did I say it correctly? B says, do you realize the truth suddenly or gradually? Both. Both. Moments of just pure awakening, and then moments of and then long times of integration and coming to understand. And it's not over yet. It's just it's very, very rare, right? There are always the sudden realizations, but the sudden realizations upnotch you. But the ultimate final end, the emergence as a Buddha, well, that hasn't happened to me. It doesn't happen very often. Right? But it doesn't matter. The Mujis of the world are very rare, right? But it doesn't matter, right? So what you're doing is a realization of a truth. It sinks into the nervous system, and you begin to live that truth. And as you do, it'll uncover other things, and other things will be exposed. But just remember, we're realizing an eternal truth. We're not making something true. We're not becoming something that we weren't. We are realizing what we are. And that realization can take months, years, minutes, or it can take, lifetimes. Fortunately, the whole process is speeding up, and it's not taking lifetimes anymore. It's kind of the age we live in, and the blessing of the age that we live in. So for me, it's both. It's this constant unfolding and recognition. There's a fundamental recognition of the original innocence, the original purity of being. But the living of that, the embodying of that, that dissolving the conditioning is a process that's been going on my whole life and will continue right to the very end. That answers it for you, BE. Anne says, how to create everything webinar channeled from source. Feels like not something we do. Do we create our own reality? I talk about things like that, about creating our own reality. We do, in the sense that our perception of things, our beliefs about things, literally create the lens through which we perceive everything. It's why we perceive this and not that. Those beliefs and assumptions are put in place long before we have any say about it. So on one hand, you can say, I create my own reality. You can consciously attempt to change your thoughts and feelings, and you will have a different experience. And that's where metaphysics and the law of attraction and that sort of thing, and create your own reality, folks, that's where it stops, because they don't ask the deeper existential question, that is, who am I? And if a mere change in my thoughts can change the entire tenor of what I experience, what's the nature of what I'm experiencing? Is it really material? Or is there something else going on here? The big complaint I have about the law of attraction is it just settles for stuff, for getting more consumer goods, and doesn't say, wait a minute, this is pretty significant. If all I have to do is change my thinking and my world changes, this should be cause for an enormous curiosity, an enormous inner explanation. exploration, and not just, oh great, how to make more money. To me, that is just such a, it's kind of like, what they did with TV, this incredible technology of TV, and what do you get? 500 channels of crap. There's very little worth. But people don't even want to watch TV. They DVI something or Netflix, exactly what they want and nothing else. It's pretty amazing. And even so, the range of choices is awfully very disappointing. And so, to me, it's like it's so trivial. This is what the whole metaphysical thing points to, is so deeply significant, and yet we just, we settle for the cheap shiny object. So I hope that answers your question there. She says, is it up to us to direct the universe, or just allow and accept what is? What is our role as humans in creation, if there is one? No, you don't direct the universe, you perceive the universe. The universe, think of the universe as the infinite potential. Well, what is going to manifest? Whatever you put your attention on is going to manifest. Wherever your attention goes and stays, that's going to get amplified. That's easy to prove. It's easy to demonstrate. Nothing woo-woo or esoteric about that. Our attention is what limits the range of our focus, and it limits what fills our field of view. So you're not creating, nor are you getting the universe to give you stuff. Your perceptions make your experience. Shift your perception, you shift your experience. It's as simple as that. If you shift your perception about the most fundamental belief you have, which is about your own being and nature, you will become liberated. If you don't, you'll simply be changing, basically making a better life, could be better, but you haven't really pierced the significant part of it. You really haven't gotten to the root of it. And the root of it is the existential question. Well, who am I? If I can create the universe, if my perceptions can create the entire structure of what I experience, then who am I? What am I? How does this universe actually work? I want to inspire people to that level of inquiry and consideration. That's my mission in life. But for most, they're satisfied with just, oh, I can change my thinking and get a new house or a new car, or have more money in the bank. And that's where they put their attention. And to me, that's just not adequate. It's not satisfying. And in fact, for most people, it doesn't even work. There's too many other factors involved that approach is just too naive. So what is our role as humans in creation, if there is one? Your role is to discover that you are more than human. That's your role. Discovering who you actually are is the point. Right? Not to create something, because the creation of something is going to be based on your own view of things. And that view, it could be very, very limited. Our wants, our desires are all being constrained by this sense, this sense of self, the sense of identification with our conditioning. So even the desire of what we want to create is nothing but more of the conditioning. Who are you that is beyond conditioning? Discovering the you that was there before any of the conditioning took place. Then you won't have to worry about manifestation. It'll take care of itself. The universe will transform before your very eyes. And instead of it being something that you don't direct the mirror to reflect you back. You don't have to. You just stand in front of it and it reflects. And that's the true nature of the universe. Mark White, IGP, a YouTube tuber named Claire Wineland died a couple of weeks ago. I never met her, but it has broken my heart. I've read where nothing is two because everything is one. Is that why I'm so upset? Wow. Thanks. Well, yes. Now, I always like to be really careful about this because, people can say all is one and so it can heal grief. And then we think we're not supposed to feel grief if, somebody that means something to us passes on. Um, there's nothing about awakening that takes you out of the normal experience of life. When we lose something, it hurts, we grieve, and that's okay. If we hang on to it, if we make up stories about it, that grief becomes suffering. But grief is normal, right? You know, you get used to certain people. You know, it's somebody important in your life dies, even if it's somebody that you just, you've got, you have a relationship with them. There's an energetic exchange going on. And when that gets cut off, you feel it. Of course you feel it. So I always like to say, yes, you're one, but don't mean that somehow that's going to, like, you're not going to ever feel sad, or that you shouldn't feel sad. It's simply not true. You simply let the sadness, the grief run through the system naturally, and it will just kind of resolve itself, because it knows how to do that. It's only when we hold on to things we don't want to let go, or we make up stories about it, that we suffer. And that's what I'm here to eliminate, is suffering. I can't eliminate loss, because everything's impermanent. Everything's going to come and go. Right? But I can eliminate suffering by removing all resistance to it. If I'm not resisting the inevitable changes that are going to happen, I'm not going to suffer. I'm just going to grieve. Can you see the difference? Right? And so you've had a connection with, you had a connection with this woman, and now she's gone. I've had that feeling before about people I've never met, that I've learned something from them, that I had a relationship with them, even though we never met in person. And you miss them when they're gone. And that's okay. They have value to you. If they had no value, you wouldn't miss them. So you simply don't, you simply let yourself feel that sense of loss. No resistance, no suffering. And that sense of loss will move through you. The, the, the powerful and positive effect they've had on you will remain, and feed you and comfort you and companion with you. And the sense of loss will eventually fade away. Benoit says, I have a hard time to conceive how everything happening spontaneously can be so utterly beautiful. There must be a force creating all of this. Awareness can only be aware, so what creates appearance? And there's the mistake. Awareness is aware of itself. Put it this way. Imagine an infinitely creative mind. Not in a body, infinite. I mean, just mind. Just a self-aware, self-conscious being. Well, what is that mind, that self-conscious being, going to think about? It's going to think about the only thing it can think about, and that it's itself. The infinite awareness is aware of itself, and that awareness creates the universe. It's thinking about itself, and the image within it is an image of itself. That is eternity, that is infinity, that is the universe and everything in it. It is awareness aware of itself. So awareness is just aware, but its self-awareness is you and the universe. It's nature to give rise to the form, but the form doesn't exist independent from it. It's like it's a condensation of it. So it is made of awareness. It appears to awareness, it appears in awareness, and it is made of awareness. Awareness is the ultimate substance, but there's nothing outside of awareness forming it, like a potter in the clay. It is kind of self-forming clay, you might say. Does that help? It's very difficult to conceive, because the conception is all dualistic in nature, and awareness is not. What you're talking about is the oneness of consciousness, being, and bliss. And oneness is ungraspable by the mind. Simple as that. She said, sorry if I repeated myself. You didn't. It's quite all right. Tom Tom says, thank you for your answer. GP, you're welcome, Tom Tom. Medina says, do meet up in Seattle? I'm thinking about it. If I can find somebody to help me organize it. I just can't do all of it myself. So I think it'd be really great to do something here in Seattle, since I'm here so much now. Anybody got any volunteers to help me with that? It'd be really great. Winter's Night says, what do you mean by the inside? Where is the inside? Inside of what? Very, very good question, Winter's Night. Thank you. This is pretty amazing. Right. Yeah. I mean, inside and outside fall apart. We use the term inside. We have to use it loosely because it seems like out there in here. When I use the term inside, I'm simply meaning an awareness of of thought, feeling, and sensation, and an awareness of yourself being aware. That to me is the inside. We're looking towards ourselves, but that self that we're looking towards is not some object out there, right? We're trying to find ourselves, but now, of course, the true self is everywhere. Your real being is everywhere. So to say inside and outside makes no sense. But we start by focusing the attention on what we call inside, and then we can open up and bring the whole outside in as well, because there's neither in nor out. Those are just concepts we made up. Everything is within consciousness. Everything appears to consciousness. And if everything appears within consciousness, well, where's the out? Where's the in? They cease to have any meaning, as all opposites do. But for the purpose of teaching, for the purpose of exploring, for the purpose of us being able to communicate, we have to use terms like that. So thank you for asking that so clearly. The inside is felt. The inside is attempting to see where you are looking from. Now, of course, you can't do that because you can't step outside from your outside and look back at the inside. So it's a different way of approaching it. It's a different way of trying to just see yourself. And I have to refer to that as the inside, because it is the most intimate to you, right? I mean, an object outside here, this computer behind me or something, has a certain distance. My thoughts seem much closer. Let me. Sorry about that. All of a sudden, somebody's. My thoughts, feelings, and sensations feel much closer, but something is feeling them. Something is aware of sensation, thought, and emotion, which are extremely close and intimate. Whatever that is, to me, is the ultimate inside. What I'm really looking for is you. That's what I mean by focusing attention inside, just the sense of your own being. And so, yes, it is beyond inside and outside. So, your question is quite good. So, I hope that satisfies in terms of the answer to that. Because unfortunately, we have to use dualistic words to give expression to things that are not dualistic. And of course, when you go purely in the non-dual, there are no words. There's only silence. So Matt says, hello, Matt. Hi, it doesn't feel like awareness is always there for me. It seems to come and go like everything else. Where is it when I'm not aware of it? It's a great question. And the answer is subtle, but I think you're mistaking attention for awareness. If we explore, we notice that our attention comes and goes. The things that we see come and go. Everything we experience comes and goes, but it comes and goes to something. Now, yes, there might be an experience of there being no experience, like in deep sleep at night, or maybe under anesthetic. There's no experience whatsoever. We're assuming awareness is gone. But I think it's equally legitimate to assume, and more legitimate to assume, that there is absolutely nothing for it to be aware of. So it is just pure being. It is not even aware of itself. It just is. It is just pure awareness, pure consciousness. Now, if you are awareness, it can't go somewhere when you're not aware of it. So the question, then, the exploration is then, well, then what am I? Am I something that is aware? In which case awareness comes and goes. Okay, great. But then what am I? What is it that that to which awareness appears to come and go? Is that not aware? Well, then that's awareness. And whatever this is, isn't. It's something else. I'm always bringing back to you, that which is aware. And so the moment awareness becomes like kind of a metaphysical object, now it too is coming and going. And for the most part, when people are referring to that, they're actually referring to attention and not awareness. Awareness is something different. Awareness is you. It is whatever you're experiencing is happening because you're aware of it. Experience, of course, is going to come and go. And it's possible to have periods of no experience whatsoever. Deep sleep at night, anesthetic, and samadhi in many things are simply the mind stops. There's no experience whatsoever. It is just being. And so it can't come and go. If it does come and go, it means you come and go. It means there would be a gap, right? I mean, just boom, you're gone, and then all of a sudden you show up again and time has changed. If you're coming and going within an environment of time, all of a sudden time is gone. Now, we have that experience every night when we sleep. But are you not there? I mean, it's a very deep inquiry, and I invite you to make it wholeheartedly. We think, oh, awareness is gone, but the body is still here, and it's just kind of functioning, and it's just out cold. That's the way we think of it. And yet we never experience that. We experiencing the body disappearing, thoughts disappearing, sensations disappearing. All of that disappears. That's what we actually experience. So from that, I am simply saying, as far as I can tell, awareness never is gone. That what appears to awareness comes and goes, but awareness itself, no. And so I elevate awareness to being my actual nature, my actual being. And the body itself is something that comes, my experience of a body just comes and goes. It's not permanent. Does that help, Matt? It's not an easy one. And I deeply appreciate you asking the question. Kaylee says, out of my practice, I feel that awareness, being our luminous center, is that same vibrant energy of love, our core energy. Kaylee, also I'm experiencing we get to be where our vibration is a match with people, places, etc. Yes, yes to all of that. Awareness is that same vibrant, yes. Awareness and love are the same thing. I mean, we define it in terms of the emptiness, but the opposite of the ego is love. The infinite self is infinitely loving. Awareness loves itself. The self loves the self. And that love is reflected in the self-image the self has of the self. So the universe is nothing but love. That's all there really is. That is the perfume of being. That is the nature of Ananda. So yeah, it is the energy of love. That is our core energy. That's the real nature of our character. Because what's there? I mean, there's no fear there. There's no worry. There's no lack. There's no doubt. There's pure self-acceptance, pure self-unconditional love. But this is a different kind of love. It's love as the nature of reality itself. It's not love for some object. It's not personal. It's not dualistic. It is simply love without an object. It is love loving itself. So more than welcome to use that word love. And of course, the more you are yourself, the more your energy pattern is going to shift. The more the vision of who you really are sinks into the nervous system, the more the energetic pattern is going to shift. And what's going to happen? Different people are going to come, more opportunities. Perception is going to change. You're going to see things that you didn't see before. This is all exactly what's supposed to happen. It's the only reason I caution is that people can get really hung up in the things that are happening and then lose the real benefit, which is the discovering who you really are. It's not about the changes in circumstances that come about. It's about the existential insight. The existential insight leads to having different circumstances. But the ego is only interested in different circumstances. It's not interested in self-awareness. It's not interested in knowing who it really is. It only wants the goodies. Right? So it wants to maintain itself with all the goodies. That's the big mistake that the whole law of attraction thing is made. But the opposite, when you discover who you are, of course, goodies come. And if they don't come, you don't care. You are no longer enslaved to circumstance. So the sense of well-being just remains. And that's what's most important about this. Mark White says, thanks, GB. That was beautiful. God bless. Thank you, Mark. Very good. Matt says, is it really necessary to do inner work such as the reconciliation courses, etc., to heal? If I truly know who I am and abide in awareness, then won't I realize that there's nothing to heal? Yes. You're absolutely correct. And if you can go directly to it, by all means do it. My experience, just as teaching this for so long, is that most can't. So I'll try to go directly to that existential point of view. But if you can't, well, you back off. You try something else. You try something else. I mean, that's how Buddha taught. He just directed what he taught to the level of understanding of the group that he happened to be addressing, whoever he was talking to. And he had covered all sorts of different levels, and all, some very rudimentary, some very, very advanced, and then in the Lanka, it just kind of blows the whole thing out of the water. So you're absolutely right. I mean, my course Inner Reconciliation is also in that same category. It's a temporary teaching. It's a way of coming to understand that you're not broken, that the energy system, that you are not the conditioned responses. And of course, that's where a lot of people fall down. That's one of the things I found people struggling with in spiritual inquiry, is that just this not really understanding, thinking of themselves as the conditioning and then trying to improve themselves, make themselves better, make themselves spiritual. When what's really needed is to completely drop the idea that that's who you are. And if you can do that right out the get-go, do it. Yeah, don't hesitate. You don't have to go through any courses. If you can't, well, keep going down to the place where you can really get a footing, and then take the next step up. So I totally concur with your assessment, Matt. AK 11020. I heard the term self-inquiry mentioned a lot, but I don't quite understand it. I don't understand what it means in practical terms. How does one practice self-inquiry? Is there a method as such? Oof, yes. Yeah, there is. Let me see if I can give it to you in brief. I forgot water. I didn't bring any water for myself. When you look at something that you're experiencing, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm unhappy. I'm uncomfortable. I'm lonely. We are always willing to, we look at the feeling that we're having. I'm unhappy. I'm lonely. I'm scared. We look at that feeling, then we look at the circumstances that we think is causing that feeling, and that's where all our energy is. Never or rarely do we look at, say, I am unhappy. Do we actually turn our attention away from the circumstance and the feeling to the I? If we look at that feeling of being unhappy or lonely or sad, we realize that what we're seeing, what we are experiencing is sadness, uh, thoughts of the sadness, and a feeling within the body of the sadness. That's what we're actually experiencing. They're feelings, right? Those are there clearly, right? But now, the I that is feeling those, let's take a close look at that. Where we say, I am sad. Well, we can't say I am sad because the sadness isn't always there. Well, in this moment, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling something that is that I recognize as sadness. But that comes and goes. So sadness is not what I essentially am. So now notice we're inquiring into the nature of the I. We know what the sadness is, but instead of going to the causes of the sadness as something external, we want to look at the one who says they're sad. We want to look at the sad one, and we want to see if we can find who they are. When we say I am sad, who am I referring to? But then we look really closely and we find that sadness is a set of feelings and thoughts. And then we look for that I that is sad. Is there anything in the sadness and the thoughts itself that says you're sad, or is it just a feeling? And this is very subtle because when I think, well, I am, right? I'm the one. Well, wait, consciousness is experiencing a set of thoughts and feelings identified as sadness. Is that what you are? Are you that sadness, or is that just a feeling that comes and goes? All right. It's clearly a feeling that comes and goes because you don't feel that all the time. Okay, good. Now, if that's the case, then what are you? What are you that is there? Whether a feeling of sadness is there, or thoughts of sadness are there, or they're not there. What is this I? And if it's there and this comes and goes, is it legitimate for me to say I am sad? Or does it say, oh, I am something other than sadness, but sadness comes and goes? Which means the I that I think is sad doesn't exist except as a thought. I am not that sadness. I'm something else. Who am I? That's self-inquiry. You are now putting your attention not on what is being experienced, but on who's having the experience, and trying to find out, is the one that is unhappy or the one that is sad, is that who I am? Does that one exist at all? Or is it just a thought of identification that has been associated with feelings that have come and gone? And of course, if the one who is sad isn't real and dissolves, so does the sadness. And thus it is a real liberation of the emotional state, and not just a distancing from it. You're not just standing aloof from it. Does that help you? AK11020. Patang says, truth realization starts the moment you turn your attention inward instead of outward. As your attention deepens, duality fails. All remains that it remains as you, nowhere, and now, no time, just awareness. Absolutely correct. Matt says, yes, thank you. Good, glad. Thank you, Matt. Barbara says, I would like to help you, GP. I'm rather isolated in Sandpoint. Would that be a hindrance? Not at all. Wonderful. I think I have your email. If not, send me an email or just send an email to support@MasterHEARTInstitute.com. And we'll, thank you, Barbara. That's wonderful. That'd be really great. Okay. It's going on 3 o'clock for me, 5 o'clock for, or no, 6 o'clock in New York, and God knows what time it is in Europe. I think you guys are 8 hours ahead of me, like in, so 3 o'clock here is what, 11 o'clock at night in Europe, and even more so other parts of the world. So I think I'm going to bring it to a close here now. as always, thank you all for being here. And I'm really excited about being able to do some of these live and maybe even come to a city near you. So I want to thank you all once again for being here, and I hope this was really useful to you and valuable. I hope it really blesses you, and by all means, leave more comments, ask more questions. I do look at every comment that is made, um, even the ones that are derogatory, and I do get them. Funny that. Nonetheless, thank you all for being here. I love you. Namaste.